Hello, hockey fans, and welcome to another episode of Anatomy of a Season, the show where we take a look at a given hockey team during a given season, and take a month by month and sometimes playoff series by playoff series look at these teams. And this week we're going to look at a team that, while nobody thought would be terrible, nobody thought they would be all that great either. They looked like your prototypical middle-of-the-road hockey club, the 2011-2012 Los Angeles Kings. Indeed, a team that even on paper was looked at simply talented, but not great. A typical fill a playoff spot type team. We see those teams every year, just ask the Minnesota Wild. But anyway, what led up to this year requires a backstory. The Los Angeles Kings entered the NHL as part of the next six in 1967, as part of the NHL's first major expansion, joining the original six in the NHL. They, along with the Minnesota North Stars, the Philadelphia Flyers, Pittsburgh Penguins, St. Louis Blues, and California Golden Seals / Oakland Seals. Well, anyway, the Seals' legacy came down to having an awesome logo. That's pretty much it. They moved to Cleveland and ceased operation to exist in the 70s after a merger with the Minnesota North Stars. The Blues were the first of that group to have any success, however, appearing in 3 straight Stanley Cup finals in a losing cause. And as of 2011, hadn't gotten back there, and the closest they've come are 3 semi-final / conference final appearances, their last being in 2001. They've had many cup-capable teams, but just weren't able to do it. The first real success of this bunch was the Philadelphia Flyers, who became the first expansion team to win the Cup in 1974. They repeated as champions in 75. As of 2011, they have yet to win another Cup, but have made 6 appearances in the final, and for the majority of their history, they've been quite prominent playoff contenders. The Pittsburgh Penguins, as of 2011, in terms of championship success, are the most successful, and while they were a perennial laughingstock for many years, that changed when they drafted a guy named Mario Lemieux. They built the team around him, won 2 Stanley Cups, but by the mid-2000s they were laughingstocks again. But then they drafted a guy named Sidney Crosby, appeared in 2 Stanley Cups, winning in 2009, giving them 3 overall in their history. Then there was the Minnesota North Stars, who by the 1980s seemed to be on the cusp of something special, but never quite got there. They made the Cup Finals appearance runs in 1980 and 91, both miracle runs I might add, but it wasn't until the team moved to Dallas that they built an eventual champion in 1999 and reached the top. They appeared in the Cup a year later as well, but have had trouble since. Which brings us to the Los Angeles Kings. Their history has not been an easy one. To sum it up, their first 21 years of existence, they made it to the playoffs 14 times. Not at all terrible, but had only won 4 total playoff series and made only 1 Stanley Cup semifinal series, and that was in their second year of existence in 1969. And the Kings were a team that would, well, pass many hurdles, but trip over a few before they could finish the race. They had their fair share of stars, such as Hall of Fame goaltender Rogie Vachon, 2A forward star Butch Goring, but the closest the Kings had to success was the day the Triple Crown line was formed, with Charlie Simmer, Dave Taylor, and of course superstar center Marcel Dionne. He would become one of the NHL's all-time greats and all-time leading scorers, as a matter of fact. They became the first trio in NHL history to record 100 or more points each. However, bad management, questionable coaching moves, and a lack of depth would hurt the Kings for many years. Their best regular season was in 1980-81 at this point, with 99 points. The same year, Simmer, Taylor, and Dionne all had their big year. They also had a young star rookie defenseman in Larry Murphy, and a young all-star goaltender in Mario Lessard. But they collapsed in the playoffs, and things went to hell the following years. They traded Murphy for barely anything in return. He became a 4-time Stanley Cup winner and a Hall of Famer, no less. Lessard's career fizzled out pretty quick. Simmer would suffer several injury issues for the rest of his career. He was gone a few years later, and his career actually didn't last much longer once he left LA. By 1988, Marcel Dionne was gone. The Kings, however, were an up-and-coming bunch, a young team with sophomore sensations forwards Luc Robitaille and Jimmy Carson, as well as defenseman Steve Duchesne. They had a star center in Bernie Nichols, talented forward, and Jim Fox, and Dave Taylor was still there producing, but they would sacrifice Carson to obtain, yes, the greatest player of all time, Wayne Gretzky. He would join the club in a shocking trade in the summer of 1988. The turnaround was pretty much instant. The Kings were now threatening the playoffs. Other teams around him were responding to his presence. The team became a marketing machine. Gone were the days of the purple and gold crown jerseys, and here were the silver, black, and white. It's now all the rage across the NHL. Going into the 1990s, there were some speed bumps, but in 1990-91, the Kings won the Smythe Division for the very first time since divisional realignment began in 1981. Gretzky was a beast, and he had quite a cast alongside him. Robitaille, who was becoming a star in his own right, Thomas Sandstrom, Tony Granato, Dave Taylor, Bob Kudelski, Steve Kasper, and John Tonelli. On defense, Steve Deshane, Marty McSorley, Brian Benning, legendary Habit future Hall of Famer Larry Robinson, and a rookie by the name of Rob Blake. In goal, they had the talented big save sensation known as Kelly Rudy. However, the Kings couldn't get past a certain point, mainly the second round. And in the fall of 1991 at the Canada Cup tournament, Gretzky suffered a terrible back injury that would alter his career forever. That being said, back-broken Gretzky was still better than the majority of the league. In 1992-93, despite Gretzky missing almost half the season, the Kings, now with Gretzky's former longtime line mate, the legendary Jari Kurri on the club, and a new rookie star defenseman named Daryl Sador in the place of the now departed Deshane, and Charlie Huddy, another comrade of Gretzky's from Edmonton. And then, despite his injury issues, he played like his old Edmonton self in these playoffs, and the team made it all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals in a miracle run before losing in 5 games to Patrick Waugh and the clutch masters known as the Montreal Canadiens that year. Things then went to hell for the organization again and fast. General Manager Nick Beverley lost control of the team. The Kings missed the playoffs in 1994 for the first time since 1986. Gretzky was still putting up big numbers, but other members of the team like Jari Kurri and Charlie Huddy were aging. Sandstrom was battling injuries and inconsistent play, and many players would depart the team in the coming years, including Gretzky, who was traded to St. Louis in 1996. Robitaille was gone, but don't worry, he'd be back. And poor Larry Robinson, now he's behind the bench and had to pick up the pieces of this feeble club, who had their one bright spot, Rob Blake. And despite General Manager Sam McMaster bringing in talent that were way past their prime, such as Ray Ferraro, Kevin Stevens, and Neil Broughton, the team was growing in some ways. By 1998, they were back in the playoffs. Robitaille was back on the team, and Rob Blake became the first Kings player to win the Norris Trophy as the league's top defenseman. Well, by the new millennium, the Kings had become a 90-point club again. And in 2001, led by Luca Robitaille as well as Ziggy Palffy, Brian Smolinski, Joseph Stumpel, and Glenn Murray up front, they however lost Rob Blake to the Avalanche that season in a trade. But a strong blue line core of Matthew Schneider, Lubomir Wisnowski, Yaroslav Modry, and Matthias Nordstrom were all pretty solid, and a comeback kid in net by the name of former All-Star Felix Potvin. In the second round of the playoffs, they took the high-powered Colorado Avalanche to the 7th game but came up short. Things would go to hell again. Despite making the playoffs the following year, they lost Robitaille, but don't worry, he'd be back again. Dave Taylor was making some good and some not-so-good calls, as now he's the general manager of this club. However, in 2003 at the NHL Draft, he made a pick that nobody would have expected to impact the team for years to come. Dustin Brown, a native of Ithaca, New York, was taken 13th overall in the first round of the 2003 entry draft, regarded as one of the greatest draft classes of all time, and Brown has a big reason for that. In 3 seasons with the Guelph Storm of the OHL, he notched 98 goals and 96 assists for 194 points in 174 games. He also had book smarts as well as hockey smarts, winning the CHL Scholastic Player of the Year award in 2003, was on the All-Rookie team in 2001, he represented Team USA at the World Junior Championships in 2002 and 03, and his final year with Guelph, he had 34 goals, 42 assists for 76 points in just 58 games. After missing the playoffs again in 2004, however, where Brown played 31 games that season, the Kings didn't make much of a dent in the 2004 NHL draft, but after the canceled lockout season of 04-05, Taylor made another very good choice. In the first round, with the 11th overall pick, the Kings chose Slovenia native Anze Kopitar, a 6'3" centerman who had tremendous scoring abilities, was an expert passer, and used his tall frame to his advantage in the faceoff circle as well as tremendous checking and defensive abilities. He was a complete player that the Kings could really build around. In junior hockey, both in Sweden and Slovenia, he had 204 points in just 81 games. He also saw some action in the Slovenia Pro League, as represented Slovenia in the Under-18 and World Junior Championships a combined 5 times. And when I say Taylor made a good pick that year, I mean he made 2. From Avon Old Farms Boarding School in Avon, Connecticut, Avon calling, he took goaltender Jonathan Quick, 72nd overall in the 3rd round. Quick at this point was actually a prospect for the University of Massachusetts, where he'd end up playing. On the high school level, however, he was 53-8, with a 1.92 goals against average, a .933 save percentage, and 11 shutouts. 9 of those came in his senior year, where he was 25-2, with a .956 save percentage, and a goals against average just barely above a goal. He struggled at first during his time at UMass, but then really began to excel. Despite this, however, things weren't all sunshine and roses in LA, at least not quite yet. In 2005 and 06, they missed the playoffs for the 3rd straight season. And in his 6th season as coach, Andy Murray was fired in a season where the Kings looked great to start but dealt with injuries and inconsistency. Taylor wasn't exactly all that innocent in this, wasting money on washed-up veterans like Roenick, or Pavel Dimitra, who was a good grab, missed 24 games. They even had Craig Conroy and Mike Parrish for a brief spell and didn't produce all that much, as well as Mike Camilleri, but nothing came together for the club. Taylor would be fired at the end of this season. Now enter Dean Lombardi, a Holyoke, Massachusetts native who nobody looked forward to taking over this team. He was once the general manager of the San Jose Sharks, who had minor success under his tutelage, but faced a lot of criticism over questionable decision-making over the years, as the Sharks again never got past a certain point, again mainly the second round. And his handling of star goaltenders Evgeny Nabokov's contract situation wasn't exactly stellar either. In the last few years leading up to this, he was part of the Flyers scouting team. However, he wasted no time acquiring the rights to third overall pick from 2005 and Hurricanes prospect defenseman Jack Johnson, also acquiring veteran defenseman Oleg Tverdovsky in the deal. But the Kings were still having trouble progressing and could have something to do with the fact that Mark Crawford was their coach. However, progress was being made by Kopitar as their star forward. Dustin Brown may not be racking up monster numbers, but he's evolving as an asset to the team with his leadership, and they also drafted gritty power forward Wayne Simmons, but their other draft picks aren't really panning out. However, going into the 2008 NHL entry draft, the Kings had the second overall pick, and the clear number one that year was a fellow by the name of Steven Stamkos. He was taken by the Tampa Bay Lightning. I wonder whatever happened to him. The Kings took the literal next best choice. In a draft class loaded with top prospect defensemen, in the first round they chose Guelph Storm defenseman Drew Doughty. A native of London, Ontario, Doughty was the perfect defenseman to have. Strong, durable, can anchor a power play, begin a rush, he can hit, he can check, he's a good passer, has a nice shot. Drew Doughty is an answered prayer. The Kings' biggest void, however, has been defense lately, and now they are adding someone that they can really build it around. Two-time OHL First-Team All-Star, a CHL First-Team All-Star as one of the best in all of Canada, the Max Kaminsky Trophy winner for gentlemanly play. He was also on the All-Rookie team in 06, had 157 points in 190 games, and internationally, he was a king, pardon the pun. Played in 2 World Junior tournaments, winning a gold for Canada in 08, 1 gold in the Gretzky-Halinka Cup, which is an under-18 tournament. He also played for Canada in the 2007 Super Series against Russia, where Canada won 7 of 8 games. For the 2008-09 season, veteran coach Terry Murray took the reins as the team's head coach. Dustin Brown was named team captain. Defenseman Matt Green, who came over from Edmonton, is named alternate captain. And speaking of Edmonton, they acquired two-way center Jarrett Stahl. Jonathan Quick had become the team's starting goaltender, and they showed some signs of improvement in some departments but missed the playoffs for the 6th straight season. However, Lombardi made a trade parting ways with the second-round draft pick and Patrick O'Sullivan, who had produced fairly well for the Kings, for Justin Williams. The Cobourg, Ontario native and former first-round draft pick of the Philadelphia Flyers was now in his 9th NHL season. Despite always having a hard work ethic, the Flyers felt he wasn't living up to his expectations and became a bigger star in Carolina and became one of their top forwards and was a major factor in their Stanley Cup win in 2006. He's a fantastic playoff performer, and despite having a couple great seasons in Carolina, however, which included being named to the NHL All-Star Game in 2007, leading to the trade, he had been battling injuries the last 2 seasons, and the Canes saw him as a liability and sent him to LA. He has 316 points in 481 games. He was a career plus 27 at that point, and has 2 World Championship gold medals from 04 and 07 to boot. People didn't see Lombardi's moves, however, as big game changers. Prior to the 2009-2010 season, to add depth to their defense, they added Rob Scuderi to the club, coming off back-to-back Stanley Cup appearances and coming off a win with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And also veteran two-way forward Ryan Smith joined the team. Lombardi was building a formidable club, young forwards like Brown and Kopitar, the latter of whom was actually being regarded as one of the best all-around in the game, and adding the likes of Williams plus Simmons, and a growing defense led by young Drew Doughty, as well as Jack Johnson, Matt Green, and now Scuderi. And Jonathan Quick in goaltending was becoming very popular in LA, and the Kings were able to break their playoff slump in 2010. They actually finished with 101 points, their first 100-point season since 1990-91, but would lose in the first round of the Canucks in 6 games. Either way, the future looked bright. 2010-2011 saw Lombardi trying to further to build the club. Alec Martinez was added to the defense. They added steady goal scorer Dustin Penner from Edmonton to provide even more depth, but their focus seemed to be more building that killer defense. Willie Mitchell was a traditional stay-at-home defenseman who was originally drafted by the New Jersey Devils, with the Devils in the early 2000s, so their defense is pretty much covered. So he arrives with the expansion at Minnesota Wild and becomes the key in their early growth. After a brief stay in Dallas, he has spent the last 4 seasons as a key member of the Vancouver Canucks, but he has missed 34 games in the prior season. He does have a World Championship gold from 2004, and he has played in 586 career games, is a tremendous plus 82, provides great leadership, has experience, and has it everywhere he goes. The 2010-2011 season saw the Kings finish with 98 points and slip into the playoffs, but they lost to the San Jose Sharks in 6 games, despite a fantastic season from Doughty and Kopitar being the top forward, and also Jonathan Quick being great net. The Kings were still viewed as a middle-of-the-road club. They didn't really have too many star forwards and weren't scoring a lot of goals. And they may be good for a playoff berth, but not much else. They had, a couple stars, a lot of character players, and now our story truly begins. On June 23, 2011, the day before the NHL entry draft, the Kings made a huge trade with the Flyers, sending prospect Braden Shen and tough power forward Wayne Simmonds to the Philadelphia Flyers for Rob Bortson, who never played an NHL game, and center Mike Richards. This was huge, but the feedback was kind of mixed. Some felt Simmonds wasn't fitting in LA, but he had become a fan favorite. Others feel the Kings gave up way too much young talent for someone who, again, won't be a game changer. Despite being one of the best all-around forwards in the league, Mike Richards wasn't being seen as an asset to the Kings by some. Richards has played 6 seasons, all with the Philadelphia Flyers, and has spent the last 3 as their captain, leading them to a Stanley Cup appearance in 2010. In 453 games, he has 349 points. He's a tremendous face-off man. He's capable of scoring goals. He's a good penalty killer, and they certainly need a lot of this, as they were 21st in goals scored last season. Richards was a huge part of the 2010 Olympic gold medal team for Team Canada, and has played in the NHL All-Star Game once, and as a career plus 39, he's a guy you want on your team. Despite his accomplishments, again, why are people not seeing this as a game changer? The 2011 NHL Draft, however, was nothing to get excited about for Kings fans, as they had no first-round pick that year, and all these draft picks played a combined 356 games. While not awful, the majority of those were actually down to 2 players, Andy Andreoff and Nick Shore. 3 of them didn't play for the Kings at all. Joel Lowry, however, has been a significant fixture for Winnipeg for quite some time now, and the day after the draft they parted ways with Brian Smith, trading him to the team he's best known for, the Edmonton Oilers, and for Colin Fraser, a fourth-line forward, and many fans didn't care for that move. And the Kings still didn't seem to have a winning formula on paper. The Kings, however, made another big acquisition, signing free agent Simon Gagne, which many felt was a good idea, considering how he and Richards played together in Philly to great success, and Gagne at the time was considered to be one of the best all-around talents in the NHL. But by 2011, injuries had caught up with him a bit, and he had spent 10 seasons with the Flyers and was a big part of their Stanley Cup run in 2010. He was very popular among fans for his hard work ethic. He was a reliable scorer. In 727 games, he had 564 career points, was a huge plus 131, and helped the Tampa Bay Lightning to a conference final appearance despite a lackluster regular season in what would be his only year there. Either way, he has played in 2 NHL All-Star games. He's a 2-time Olympian for Team Canada, having won gold as part of that historic 2002 Team Canada squad. He was also part of Canada's 2004 World Cup of Hockey win, and has played in the World Championship, but he's also seen as another liability due to his injury issues. The odds makers, however, saw that the Kings do have a slight chance of winning this thing, as their Stanley Cup odds were 9th best out of 30 teams, putting them in the upper third of the NHL. Not bad at all, but the skeptics of course are out there because of their lack of goal scoring, but however their defense and their goaltending is on point. Either way, this shows the team has grown in some ways, but not quite enough to be a true winner apparently. So, here we go. For 45 years of existence, the Kings have had brushes with greatness but never quite got there. They made the Stanley Cup once, 18 years prior to this season, and haven't even come close since. They haven't won a playoff series since 2001. Terry Murray himself as a coach has come close to greatness, but has also failed to be a champion, yet he has this defensive-minded bunch focused. Some have even said if this Kings team was in the dead puck era, they probably could have been championship contenders, maybe even one or two. But in what has become known as the salary cap era, the style of play does not work overall, but yet could still be successful with the right fine-tuning. The defensive core is among one of the best in the league. Drew Doughty is just entering his 4th NHL season. He's already an all-star. Jack Johnson shows a great deal of presence. Willie Mitchell was still battling injuries last season, but looks good to go this year. Matt Green, Alec Martinez, Rob Scuderi all play that great traditional style to boot. And rookie Slava Voynov joins the team after achieving success in the minor league AHL. And of course in goal you have Jonathan Quick, who is coming off a combined 74 wins in the last 2 seasons, is among the goaltending leaders in major categories and can make big saves. All that is covered, but is this forward core going to be enough? Anze Kopitar is a very three-dimensional forward in the sense of scoring, defense, and leadership. However, he's not usually among the leading scorers in the league. Dustin Brown is very well led in LA and can produce, and he's a great captain. And Justin Williams seems healthy and had a pretty good season last year, but again, they don't score a huge amount of goals. However, Simon Gagne can get back to his old self, and Mike Richards can produce consistently. That can make all the difference. Jared Stoll and Dustin Pennard can provide the gritty depth, and loaded with character players such as Kyle Clifford, Colin Fraser, Brad Richardson, and Trevor Lewis, they can all lend a big hand. But is this really a winning club in the making? It doesn't really seem so on paper, I guess. But anyway, we're ready for opening nights. LA's season didn't open at home or even on the road technically. It began in Stockholm, Sweden on October 7, 2011, and it began with a game against the New York Rangers. However, the Rangers star goaltender Henrik Lundqvist in net. Of course, he's a Swedish hockey sensation. The Swedish fans were, of course, firmly on the Rangers' side. However, he and Jonathan Quick put on a show in net as the Kings' defense was on point in a thrilling 3-2 overtime win as Jack Johnson scored an overtime goal with 52 seconds to play, as Kopitar had a goal and a helper, while Mike Richards in his Kings debut also did the same, and his goal just under 5 minutes left tied the game. A good start for the Kings. The next game in Berlin, Germany saw the other goaltender named Jonathan, that is Jonathan Bernier, get the start in goal against the Buffalo Sabres. And it wasn't a good night for the Kings. Despite Kopitar's 2 goals, the Sabres simply had their number on this evening. With a 4-2 loss, as Sabres star goaltender Ryan Miller was too much for them to handle. The Kings returned stateside in a battle with the New Jersey Devils on the road, and in a game that saw Jonathan Quick play amazing in net with 36 saves, and saw legendary Martin Brodeur leave the game after the first period, it went to a shootout, but the Devils would get the win. The Kings would still walk away with a point. The Kings then went on a roll, thanks in large part to their goaltender, Jonathan Quick, who would go on a remarkable streak as they stayed in the Northeast, heading to Philadelphia, where Justin Williams, who is off to a great start, scores 2 goals, while former Flyer Simon Gagne has 2 helpers, as he's off to a great start, and Kopitar adds 2 himself, and Quick has 32 saves in a 3-2 win over the Flyers in overtime, where Johnson again scores the overtime winner. The home opener was a sellout crowd at the Staples Center, as the Kings hosted the struggling St. Louis Blues club to start the season, and Jonathan Quick got a 27-save shutout, and Simon Gagne continues to roll with 2 goals and a helper for 3 points in a 5-0 win. And then a 28-save shutout for Jonathan Quick on the road in Arizona, beating the Phoenix Coyotes 2-0, and the Kings defense is also looking very sharp. And look at this back home against Dallas. 28 saves again! Another shutout! Johnson with the lone goal and a 1-0 win, and even more impressive that Doughty has been out of action the last few games. Quick receives massive praise for his performance, showing once again why he's one of the best netminders in the NHL. And of course, a huge 4-game winning streak for the Kings. They're looking red hot. 3 straight shutouts for our hero Jonathan Quick in goal. However, Quick would get a break as the Devils would again get the best of the Kings, this time in LA with a 3-0 shutout win of their own. However, it was Johan Hedberg in net for the Devils and not Marty Brodeur. But the Kings' 4-game win streak is snapped, and the Kings' lack of scoring seems to be haunting them again. Quick is back in net for a game in Dallas, and while he does allow his first goal in just over 200 minutes of action, the Kings did score plenty of goals. 5, in fact, in a big 5-3 win over Dallas. And again, this is a solid-looking Stars team, and huge games from many players, including unexpected presence from defenseman Slava Voinov with 2 goals and an assist. Mike Richards has 3 assists in the big game. And Dustin Brown breaks out big this year with a goal and 2 assists for 3 points. Kopitar continues to shine with 2 helpers of his own, and Quick is superb in net again with 30 saves. It was in another game against the Coyotes, and they took it to overtime, and Quick had another 30 saves. But it was a 3-2 OT loss for the Kings. They had to settle for the single point. Doughty did return to the lineup, but Johnson had a rough outing on this night. The Kings sadly didn't end the month all that strong with a 3-2 loss against the Colorado Avalanche, and Jonathan Quick's first regulation loss of the season, and it was a rough night for him, allowing 3 goals and just 16 shots. But the Kings defense was doing all they could. And the Kings got out to a pretty good start, which of course included that 4-game win streak, and they start 6-3-2 in October for 14 points. Good enough for 5th place in the Western Conference to start the season, and only 2 points back of their division leaders, the Dallas Stars. So again, good way to get out the starting blocks. It's no surprise Anze Kopitar leads the team in scoring for the month, as he's off to a hot start with 14 points in 11 games, 6 goals and 8 assists. Mike Richards seems to be a good fit in the Kings uniform with 10 points, and team captain Dustin Brown comes in 3rd with 9. Again, the Kings aren't much of a scoring team, it seems, scoring 26 goals. It's not even really 2.5 a game. Gagne got off to a good start, however, statistically, but cooled down a little bit, but still provided much welcome depth. Justin Williams also played some really good games, but also began to cool off as time went on, but again seems to have presence in certain ways. Jarrett Stoll and Dustin Penner did well in their defensive roles, while Kyle Clifford, Scott Parson, Ethan Moreau did well in their grinder roles for the team this month to boot. But Kopitar seems to be carrying an unfair heavy load when it comes to the scoring aspect. Simon Gagne again showed that he can provide presence either way, as he and defenseman Rob Scuderi had a +4, which was tied for the team lead for the opening month of the season. And Scuderi was fantastic throughout the whole month, as a matter of fact, as the Kings' blue line core was still productive despite the absence of Drew Doughty, and he only played a handful of games. Jack Johnson led all defensemen in scoring with 5 points, and he played fantastic to start the season as well, and Willie Mitchell again, when healthy, is impactful when he's on the ice. Martinez and Green struggled in some games, but overall were alright, and Slava Voinov had a really good month as part of this blue line core. Jonathan Quick, in a word, was sensational. 6 wins, just 1 regulation loss all month, and an incredible 1.85 goals against average. To top it off, 3 shutouts, which all came in 3 straight consecutive games. His puck-stopping abilities, while recognized, are sadly overlooked by some, because the Kings as a whole are pretty much an overlooked club. But any success they have, even on a small scale, is in large part due to him. And it's why they're off to such a good start. And Jonathan Bernier, on the other hand, lost both his starts, and sadly didn't look very good at all. The month of November didn't start very well at all for the Kings, as they wouldn't be able to obtain a victory in the next 3 games, bringing their losing streak to a total of 5. First, they were shut out 3-0 in a loss to the Edmonton Oilers, who have been one of the biggest surprises early this season. Next up was the high-powered Pittsburgh Penguins, and the Kings looked at things well in hand, but they led 2-1 thanks to a goal and a helper from Kopitar, and Williams assisting on both goals on top of that. Not to mention Quick had made over 30 saves in net, and Malkin was being contained heavily by the defense and stymied by Quick. Unfortunately, the Pens tied it with 2:57 remaining and were going to win in a shootout. They then make a trip to San Jose despite another 2-point night from Kopitar, 2 assists from Doughty, and Quick making 34 saves. The Kings can keep up with Jumbo Joe and the Sharks and would lose 4-2. Scuderi and Johnson both had a rough evening in that outing. The Kings, however, broke their losing skid with a tight 4-3 win in a very competitive outing with the Nashville Predators. Quick gets a break as Bernier steps in, making 27 saves and looks sharp in his first win of the year. Stoll and Williams each have 2 assists in a huge cohesive effort, and the Kings did let a 2-0 lead slip in the first. However, Richards and Gagne put them ahead to stay, a big win for the Kings. But the good times didn't last, as the Kings lost for the 6th time in 7 games. The Vancouver Canucks were the defending Western Conference champions, led by the Sedin twins and Roberto Luongo in net, went up 3-0 by the end of the first period. The Kings did make a bid for a comeback thanks to goals from Doughty and Richards, both assisted by Kopitar, but could not get the equalizer and would lose 3-2. But just like that, the Kings get it together. They overcame a very talented Minnesota Wild club led by Danny Heatley with a 5-2 win, a huge collaborative effort once again. Gagne with a goal and a helper, Williams with 2 assists, and the Kings defense playing outstanding as Johnson and Scuderi are great in this particular game. Stahl's doing his thing on the checking core, and the Kings then took on the struggling Anaheim Ducks squad to get something going, as their goaltender Jonas Hiller was turning everything back. However, as the Kings' defensive core and Jonathan Quick were not giving the Ducks any room to come back. Richards had the lone goal for the Kings, with Teemu Selanne tied up for the Ducks on a power play with 3:25 to play. Overtime solved nothing, and the shootout saw 14 shots total combined with both teams, as Quick and Hiller were making big saves, each only letting in 1 shootout goal. After facing 6 shots each, however, Justin Williams scored on the 7 for the Kings. That proved to be the winner as Quick stopped Curtis Foster, and the Kings get a tight win over their division rivals. And then the second of the home-and-home series with the Ducks saw a few more goals than the first one. At first, it looked like it was going to be much like the last game after a scoreless first period. The Kings led 2-1 after 2, but let a 3-1 lead slip in the third. But Kopitar scored a huge game winner with around 3 minutes to play. Richards had an empty netter for his second goal of the game. It's a 5-3 win for the Kings. They are really working together to make these wins happen, from the first to the fourth lines to every defensive pairing, and of course, Jonathan Quick. On this day, he made 35 big saves. It's all about a big teamwork ethic. However, the Detroit Red Wings came to town and put an end to the joy, downing the Kings 4-1. Thanks to 2 goals from Pavel Datsyuk, Quick was bombarded and couldn't turn everything back. But hey, they rebounded quickly with a 3-2 win over the St. Louis Blues as Quick gets a break and Bernier's back in net and Mike Richards continues to shine. This game was deadlocked at 2 with 5:49 to play. Willie Mitchell, who isn't known for his goal-scoring prowess, scores a huge game winner, and the Kings have now won 4 of their last 5. And then a road trip to Dallas commenced, and after a scoreless first period, the Kings led 2-0 after 2, thanks to goals from Richards and Westgarth. But lost the lead as Dallas got 2 goals back in the third. The equalizer with just 21 seconds left. The Stars were going to win in overtime, Quick stopping 35 shots in the loss. And it was a very defensive-minded game when the mighty Chicago Blackhawks came to town. And the way that Kopitar, as well as Doughty, and the blue line core contained Patrick Kane was outstanding. But it wasn't enough, as the Hawks goaltending was slightly better on this night. The Kings dropped a 2-1 loss. However, they ended the month right as Jonathan Quick made a huge 33 saves, got his 4th shutout of the year already, and the Kings took a 2-0 win over the Sharks as the Kings shooters bombarded Niemi, but he too played a beauty. The Kings system worked on this one. And the Kings went 6-5-2 for the month of November in 13 games and had trouble finding consistency at times. And while that's not a terrible record, it did cause them to slip to 8th place in the Western Conference, but still way too early to panic as they still hold a playoff slot. But they're only a point ahead of both the Sharks and Oilers, with the Predators still in the thick of things as well. However, the whole conference is still very tight, and a simple roll of games could put the Kings in a higher standing. In terms of scoring, Mike Richards is proving to be a really good grab, as he may be the best all-around dynamic forward for the Kings so far early on this season. His 10 points ties for the team lead with Anze Kopitar, who stays consistent despite a few struggles, but Richards' 9 goals leads the team. Tied for 3rd in scoring with 8 points is Simon Gagne, who is proving to be a lot for the Kings with 4 each, as is Justin Williams with his 8 assists. It was another slow scoring month for the Kings, as they still aren't quite even averaging 2.5 goals yet. But Dustin Brown had an okay month, as did Kyle Clifford. Jarrett Stoll played very well. Ethan Moreau and Dustin Penner, despite missing some action, looked alright. And little-used Andrei Lotkianov came up big in some games in Penner's absence. Either way, the Kings forwards, for what they lack in goals, they make up for in depth. But is that really going to be enough down the stretch? Richards' overall impact was felt further so that he led the team with +5. And for the month of November, he was tied with Kings defenseman Matt Green, who proves he is one of the most underrated blue liners in the league, as he can really deliver on any given shift. And he, along with the man who led the team in defensive scoring all month, Drew Doughty, who had 5 points, were the best among this awesome defensive core. Johnson and Scuderi both struggled a little bit in November, but weren't exactly what you could say are bad. While Willie Mitchell remains a very welcome presence for the team, as is Slava Voinov, playing very well in many games. And Alec Martinez, who missed some action, did also pretty well when he was healthy. For Jonathan Quick, it was a little bit of a far cry from the opening month, as he had a shocking losing record of 4-5-2. His goals against average fell quite a bit, but still a good 2.42, and he did register his 1st shutout of the year, and in some games was kind of left standing on his head. And not to mention he was out to dry in a lot of them too, despite the good defense that was in front of them. Be that as it may, it's not exactly a 180 in reverse, and hey, look at Bernier in his 2 appearances. He won them both and looked pretty good. Well, what can you say? The Kings' goaltending is still one of the most solid things about them. And the Kings started December just right with a 2-1 tight win over the Florida Panthers. Jonathan Quick put on a Vezina Trophy performance with 41 saves as LA fans applauded his efforts, save after save after save. And they look to see if they can keep riding this momentum. And they can't. They go on a big losing streak. First it starts against Montreal, a team that's also trying to find its footing. And while Bernier is good, Carey Price is better, and the goals don't come in a 2-1 loss. Penner getting his 1st goal of the year. And then they fall behind 2-0 against the struggling Ducks, and to their credit, they come back to tie it thanks to goals from Voinov and Williams, but Bobby Ryan of the Ducks scores with 49 seconds to play in regulation, hitting them a heartbreaking loss. And the Kings, to their credit, were like a firing squad in on Minnesota goalie Matt Hackett, but he turned away 42 of 44 shots, while Quick didn't have the best night, letting in 4 goals off 24 shots, and the Kings drop a 4-2 defeat, and Jack Johnson assisting on both goals. And Bernier again is in net, and he plays pretty well again, and again the Kings score very little goals. Defense is all good, and they're having a good goaltending. That's pretty important, but goals are important too. I mean, you get away with being in the middle of the road kind of goal scoring team in this era and still be successful, but this isn't 2003 anymore. Ay. Yeah, oh, and yes, in case you don't get it, they lost the game to Dallas 2-1. And thus, this spelled the end of the Terry Murray era in Los Angeles. This losing skid ultimately cost him his job, and much like many coaches in Kings history, their failure to get past a certain point was also a major factor. He had spent 4 seasons as the coach of the club, pretty much the average life expectancy for a Kings coach, it seems, in their history, and if anything, he may have even exceeded it in some ways. But the team just looked like kind of a mess, and Murray's system sadly just is not made for this era, and to date, as of the end of the 2022-2023 season, he has not held a head coaching position in the NHL since. And the players liked Murray, and they respected him, and this was kind of met with mixed emotions. Some felt if the Kings were any good at all, Murray was actually a big reason for that. Well, as the Kings looked for a new head coach, they had to settle for a formidable interim as assistant coach John Stevens, who, again, has had head coaching experience, spending 4 seasons coaching the Flyers, as a matter of fact, and won a Calder Cup in the AHL. He would take over the reins and see if he can hold down the fort until someone, again, can fill the position full-time. But the losing streak hits 5 games as the Kings are indeed shut out by the defending Stanley Cup champion Boston Bruins. And again, they were determined. They were all over Boston goaltender Tuukka Rask, who obtained a 41-save shutout, and the Kings just can't score. And Brad Marchand scored 2 goals for the Bruins en route to a 3-0 win. The Kings' big guns just aren't delivering. Kopitar is playing so-so at best. Brown, Williams, Gagne, Richards, Doughty, and even Quick, his last couple starts, have faltered immensely. And hey, they finally got a win as Dustin Brown played his best game in a while, and the Kings' defense again is on point, and Quick played very well in a 2-1 victory over the basement-dwelling Columbus Blue Jackets. Again, they fired in 41 shots, showing they can shoot, but putting it in the net isn't always as easy as it seems for them, however. And great goobly moobly. What the hell happened here? I mean, yeah, the Kings are struggling, but this is just ridiculous. An 8-2 loss to the Detroit Red Wings? Oh boy, a message that scoring 2 goals a game just is not gonna cut it. Oh man, Gagne was terrible, Johnson is brutal, Martinez, who just returned to the lineup, looked bad, and Kopitar played his worst game of the year. Jonathan Quick's night was over before the halfway point of the first period, allowing 3 goals. Bernier wasn't much better. The Kings truly hit a new low this season on this night, as they still search for a new coach. The Kings, however, get a win in Toronto, as Jonathan Quick is back in form with 31 saves, and he and James Reimer had a nice goaltending duo. It's tied 2-2 after regulation, and Dustin Brown got the shootout winner after neither team could score in their earlier attempts. The Kings still trying to stay head above water. However, just after this win, they finally found their coach. Daryl Sutter is, of course, part of the infamous Sutter family dynasty, a group of 7 brothers, 6 of whom went on to play in the NHL, and he played 8 seasons in Chicago, totaling 406 games when injuries prematurely ended his career before he even hit 30 years old. However, he pretty much went straight into coaching, first as an assistant and then getting his first head coaching job in Chicago, where he lasted a few seasons. He spent 6 seasons in San Jose and made the playoffs 5 of those years, but the team could never get past a certain point, and mainly the second round. He coached Calgary for 3 seasons, taking them on a miracle run in 2004 to the 7th game of the Stanley Cup Finals. He hasn't coached since 2006, but stayed on as the team's general manager until 2010. He has 860 games experience behind the bench with 409 wins. And hey, the team responds to their new coach. It took a shootout to beat the Ducks, where Brown again was a shootout hero, and Doughty assisted on 2 goals, giving Sutter his first win as Kings coach. However, they'd suffer a shootout loss to the Sharks the very next game. Despite a superb performance from Quick in goal, stopping 34 shots, Niemi also was a beast in net. But then the team really came to life with a big win over the Coyotes. With the game tied 2-2 in the third, Mitchell and Brown scored to put the Kings ahead to stay in what would be a 4-3 win. Kopitar with 2 assists and Quick very solid in net. And he was beyond fantastic with 38 saves, stopping Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews, and Marian Hossa as the Kings get a huge win on the road, 2-0 over the powerful Chicago Blackhawks. 7 points out of a possible ace, and Sutter has taken over. However, some bad news arrives as Simon Gagne, he's been playing pretty well this season. Well, he suffered a concussion and is out indefinitely. There is no timetable for his return. Bernier gets the call against the Winnipeg Jets, and he is fantastic in net as he and Chris Mason of the Jets both made big saves, and it was scoreless after regulation. But the Jets took it 1-0 in overtime. They end the month and year of 2011 on New Year's Eve with a monster win over the defending Western Conference champions, the Vancouver Canucks, 4-1. Williams, who has had a slow month overall, has a goal and a helper, while Loktionov and Voinov each have 2 helpers. Quick and the defense play superbly, and the Sutter regime is off to a good start in Los Angeles. Well, things got going once the coaching change took place, and the Kings as a team are responding, and that Sutter can seem to find a way to get this team to win, primarily with their defense and goaltending, and still able to get enough offense in to win these games, which Murray seemed to struggle with. With a 7-6-2 December record, it was pretty much on par with their season so far, but the final stretch of that month gives us a lot of hope, and due to the struggles of other teams in that division, they now lead the division with 44 points, just edging out the Dallas Stars, and now sit in 3rd place in the Western Conference. The Kings, however, struggled to even maintain a 2-goal-a-game average this month, and again, Anze Kopitar is the man leading the way, but most of his presence came on assists, and he led the team with 11 points, however, as his 10 assists led the team for December. Tied for second, first is Justin Williams, 3 goals, 5 assists, and 8 points, and I would say was probably their best all-around forward with a tireless work ethic, and star defenseman Drew Doughty with 8 assists showed that he could have a great month as well, in terms of adding something to his scoring prowess. The leader in goals, however, was Dustin Brown with 5, and going forward without Simon Gagne will be difficult for the club as he's out for the foreseeable future. Again, Penner and Stoll were both doing their thing on the check and doing it very well. Brad Richardson was an excellent contributor this month, and Mike Richards missed several games as well, which could also be a key factor in the lack of goals. Justin Williams led the team all month with a +2, as he and Kopitar were the only two to finish in the plus category. And of course, being tied second overall in team scoring means he leads all defensemen with 8 assists and 8 points, and had a really good month as he is showing why he is one of the best in the league. Willie Mitchell also had a really good month, proving he's really reliable, just simply staying at home on that blue line. Scuderi played some great games, but Jack Johnson actually struggled immensely, had a pretty bad month. Matt Green, despite a rough start to the month, kicked it up a notch with Sutter took over. Jonathan Quick was on fire again this month, a really good 7-4-1 record and an excellent goals against average of 2.11, and his 5th shutout of the year. He is keeping the Kings in on many of these games, and while he did have a couple rough outings earlier in the month, and some probably outright brutal ones, he was on fire again by the end, making huge save after huge save and continuously winning the hearts of Kings fans. Bernier did not pick up a win, however. He was 0-2-1, but didn't actually necessarily play all that bad in his starts, and was pretty good otherwise. The Kings, however, would start January with a loss at home to the Colorado Avalanche, as the Kings' defense contained the Avs for most of the game and held a 1-0 lead after a Dustin Brown goal until Ryan O'Reilly of the Avs tied it with just under 6 minutes left in regulation. The game would end up going to a shootout where the Avalanche would pick up the win. But then it was a goaltending showdown between Mike Smith and Jonathan Quick, and hey, while both were sensational, the Kings' defense was also on point here, led by Doughty, and it was scoreless after regulation. Doughty scored the winner just 38 seconds into overtime. Quick obtains his 6th shutout of the year. The Kings' defense again was superb as Doughty and Scuderi played very well, but again, lack of goals rears its head, and the lowly Columbus Blue Jackets need just 1 goal to beat the Kings at 1-0. It's Sutter's first regulation loss in Los Angeles as a coach. Well, the Kings finally exploded with 5 goals in a 5-2 win over the Washington Capitals, a huge group effort. Clifford and Johnson, along with Trent Hunter, were the unexpected heroes in this one with 2 points each. Bernier got the start and stopped 20 of 22 shots, and as a group they checked Alexander Ovechkin tightly and held him pointless. Then it was division rival Dallas, and the Kings did erase a 3-1 deficit and took a 4-3 lead by the third, but the Stars tied it with 5:25 to play. Overtime solved nothing, and the Stars took it in a shootout. Johnson and Kopitar, however, again both played fantastic games, each with a goal and 2 assists in the 5-4 loss. The Kings then went on a Canadian Western road swing, first in Calgary. The Kings looked like they were finally solving their goal issues with a 4-1 win over the Calgary Flames, as Brown, Richards, and Williams each had 2 points. Quick was amazing in net, stopping 29 shots. However, in Edmonton, it was a bit of a different story, as the Oilers were able to keep the Kings at bay, and despite Quick having another amazing game, the Kings would lose 2-1 in overtime. And again, Williams with a lone goal for LA in that one. The story was again different in Vancouver, however, as Quick and Luongo put on a goaltending clinic. It went to a shootout, tied 2-2. Mike Richards gets the shootout winner, and the Kings obtained 5 of a possible 6 points on the road. Now, their return home, however, would see them suffer another shootout loss, and indeed it was to the Calgary Flames, as the Flames, again, were led by all-star goaltender Mika Kiprasov, and the Kings just could not solve him. And then the Kings encountered the Colorado Avalanche again and dropped another loss, this one 3-1. And to end the month, however, a close to perfect game for the Kings, a 4-1 win over the high-powered Ottawa Senators. Clifford with a goal and a helper, Doughty and Fraser with 2 assists, and Quick plays great with 27 saves, with Penner and Stoll just doing everything in their power to stop forwards such as Alfie and Spezza, and doing it very well. So again, the Kings seem to be exploding with goals here and there, but just not staying consistent in that regard. And the NHL All-Star break arrived, and the game was actually played in Ottawa on January 29th. The only representative for the LA Kings was Jonathan Quick, of course. It was his very first All-Star game selection. He He was actually a member of Team Alfredson in a 12-9 loss. In 11 games, the Kings finished 5-2-4, probably their best month so far this season, and despite numerous losses, they still accumulated points in 4 of them. However, they lose their hold of the top of the Pacific Division and slip to 7th in the Western Conference, but are in no real danger at this point as the team has shown drastic improvements in many aspects, and Daryl Sutter as their coach seems to be working more than it isn't. Even the Kings' scoring prowess saw improvement, and Sutter was still smart using the Kings' defensive-minded system, but producing a bit more in the way of points, especially later in the month. For the first time this season, however, Kopitar wasn't the leader, as Justin Williams, who's proven to be a huge asset to the Kings once again, has 3 goals and 7 assists for 10 points. Meanwhile, Kopitar, however, is still second with 4 goals and 5 assists for 9 points, while in a 3-way tie for third, Dustin Brown had an excellent month with 4 goals and 3 assists, as he and Kopitar are tied for the team lead in goals this month, and the defensemen got in on the act as Jack Johnson and Drew Doughty each had 7 points. All the top forwards were on their game. Mike Richards wasn't producing statistically this month, but was still playing a good 2-way game. And the importance of Stahl and Penner cannot be stressed enough for this club, and credit also has to go to Kyle Clifford, who had a very excellent month and was a big key for the Kings on the grind, adding some toughness, as was Brad Richardson. And oh, yes, indeed, what a month it is for Drew Doughty, as he led the team with an amazing +7, and showed just why he is the superstar defenseman he is presented to be, and played the best month he had all year. He tied the lead in defenseman points with Jack Johnson, as you saw, and Johnson, to his credit, had a huge turnaround month after a rough December. Also, Rob Scuderi and Willie Mitchell were both fantastic defensively, as his Kings defensive core is already among the league's best, and was more together than ever. Matt Green was also a warrior out there, as he often is, and rookie Slava Voinov is shining a boot. Alec Martinez, however, did not see much action. Man, what more can you say about Jonathan Quick? Despite multiple overtime shootout losses, he is having a Vezina caliber season, obtains his 6th shutout of the year, and his goals against average is an incredible 1.55 for the month. Truly outstanding. He was again hurt by the lack of goals early in the month in the team, but he's making some incredible stops, and to boot, his defense is also giving him the right kind of breathing room. Bernier only saw 1 game of action, but he won it and only allowed 2 goals. And hey, the Kings start February off right with a 3-2 win over the Columbus Blue Jackets. A very exciting game. Tied 2-2 with just time winding down in regulation. Looked like we were going to be heading to yet another overtime, but with 1 minuscule second to play, Drew Doughty took a pass from Jack Johnson and slapped it home for the win. Yeah, boy, but things went south of the border quick. Lack of goals come back to haunt the Kings. And again, Jamie Langenberger's goal was all the Blues needed to shut out the Kings 1-0. Quick made 32 saves in the loss. And in Carolina, the Kings led 1-0 after the first period with a goal from Kopitar, and that would literally be all they would score. And they lose 2-1. Bernier was in net for that one. The Kings did notch a win, however, in Tampa Bay. 8 different players notching a point in a 3-1 win. Quick making 24 saves, a great cohesive effort. But then the trip did not end well in Florida because they suffered a 3-1 loss to the Panthers. Doughty getting the lone goal in that one. And the road trip continued. It wasn't good. They did get a point against the New York Islanders, but lost 2-1 in overtime. Loktionov getting his first goal of the year. The Kings looked the best they have all month so far with a big 4-2 win in Dallas over the Stars. As Dwight King, a call-up from the AHL, who has 6 games NHL experience, scores his first career points in a huge way with a goal and an assist, while rookie Jordan Nolan, another AHL call-up, gets his first career goal, as these two are added to the team to even give them more size up front. Williams and Kopitar each have 2 points, and Quick stops 26 shots. But the joy is short-lived. 4 straight losses, 3 in regulation. They ran into a scorching hot Coyotes club and lost 1-0. The Kings' defense was playing great, but their forwards were not. And again, the same problems with Terry Murray coaching were now affecting Daryl Sutter. A Mike Camilleri goal is all the Kings needed to lose this one. 1-0, back-to-back shutout losses by identical scores. This is not good, but hey, great news! The Kings score again, and take an early 3-0 lead in the first period against the Coyotes. And Phoenix catches up, and they only trail 4-3 by the third, and tie it with 2:27 to go. Go to a shootout. They lose. Brown and Richards each had 2 points, reminding fans, hey, we still exist, as they only had 2 points all month going into that game. And then came a disastrous 4-1 loss to the Colorado Avalanche. Doughty with a lone goal, a rare bad night for Quick, allowing 3 goals in 1 period, ending his night early. Oh, something needs to be done here. There's nothing wrong with a defensive-minded system, but now whatever Sutter had done is being figured out by the opposition, and the team just seems worse off than they were with Murray all of a sudden. With 18 goals in 11 games, oh my goodness, we need our shot in the arm here. More than half of those goals came in the mere 3 wins they had that month. The trade deadline is arriving. Lombardi needs to make a move, and he needs to make a biggie. He likely knows his job is depending on it. So the Kings trade defenseman Jack Johnson and a conditional first-round draft pick in 2012 or 2013. Again, all depends on the Kings' playoff status. To the lowly Columbus Blue Jackets in exchange for a big man scoring forward, Jeff Carter. And yes, he can score goals. But Johnson, however, is one of their best defensemen. This could be a huge risk. But either way, let's take a look at Jeff Carter. He has spent most of his career in Philadelphia and is closing in on 200 career goals in his 7th season. He has 368 points in 461 games. In his 6 prior NHL seasons, he has reached the 20-goal mark all but once and reached 30 or more goals 3 times. His career high being 46 in the 08-09 season, where he was named to the NHL All-Star Game. And despite missing many playoff games, he did play all games in the 2010 Stanley Cup Final for the Flyers, and also played for Team Canada in the 2006 World Championship. This season, however, he's been drowning with a very sad Columbus Blue Jackets team who Philly made a blockbuster deal with before the season started. He has missed many games, and in the 39 he has played, he has scored 15 goals with 10 assists for 25 points, but is a -11. But now he's a King, and maybe he can find his full groove again and influence this team, as he is now reunited with former teammate Mike Richards, and perhaps Simon Gagne if he returns. And indeed, Carter suits up as the Kings end their losing streak in a huge way against the awesome Chicago Blackhawks. But the story was Dustin Brown. What a night! His 3rd career hat-trick as an assist for 4 points, is in on all 4 goals in a monster 4-0 shutout win for Jonathan Quick, his 7th shutout of the year. This is the shot in the arm the Kings sorely needed, and their captain was the one who stepped up. Stahl had 3 assists, amazing night for him, while Mitchell had a goal and a helper. Brown continued to roll, scoring the lone goal, however, in a 2-1 loss to the Nashville Predators. And the Kings end the month with their offense having woken up a little bit, with another 4-0 win, this one over the Minnesota Wild, as Bernier gets the 26-save shutout, his first of the year, as Brown is again rolling with 2 assists. Williams and Kopitar each have a goal and a helper. It was a brutal month overall for the Kings, but at least they ended it strong. They went a lackluster 5-7-2 in 14 games for February, and have now slipped all the way to 10th place in the West, out of a playoff spot, but only a point behind 8th place division rival Dallas. But the Pacific Division saw a huge shakeup as the Coyotes went the month of February without suffering a single regulation loss and winning 11 games, shooting straight to the top of the division. Lombardi and Sutter, however, are refusing to let this team be stagnant anymore, making the big move for the Carter trade. And indeed, while the Carter trade was intended to indeed wake the Kings up, it was their captain who responded to their slump. Brown, who was having a decent month defensively, woke up with a huge 7 points in the final 3 games of the month, including that big hat-trick 4-point night against the Hawks, and allowed him to be the team leader in points of February with 11. However, Kopitar still proves to be the model of consistency for this club with 10 points in 2nd. Justin Williams also stays the course with 9 points, coming up in 3rd. Carter has yet to break out, but his ice time has been somewhat limited as he adjusts to the Kings lineup. Penner missed a lot of games. Stahl, however, was still very impactful on the penalty kill, and new additions Dwight King and Jordan Nolan gave the Kings added strength on the check. But Mike Richards was not delivering what many had hoped he would in the last little while, and Kyle Clifford continues to add depth. But again, despite the 2 big 4-goal games to end the month, which hopefully is a sign of things to come, they're still not even really averaging 2 goals a game. Brown's overall impactfulness meant he led the team all month with a very impressive +6, and is showing leadership in more ways than one on and off the ice. Doughty again led all defensemen with 4 goals and a helper for 5 points. He had a really good month, but not near as good as his January. Willie Mitchell was far and away, however, the best defenseman for the Kings all month, while Voinov and Green played excellently in many games, as did Martinez, who rebounded from missing most of January and many games this year. Scuderi also was consistently good out there, while before the trade, Johnson was so-so, and perhaps that's why the Kings felt they were able to see him as expendable to sacrifice him to get Carter. Despite his losing record this month of 4-6-2, Jonathan Quick was still tremendous in goal. He got his 7th shutout of the year, and his 2.32 goals against average is still very good, despite being a far cry from the just over 1.5 the prior month. But either way, he's still one of the best in the league. Bernier had 2 starts and a couple relief appearances, getting his first shutout of the year in an excellent goals against average of under a goal. 18 games remain. The Kings are in 10th place, 15 in March, 3 in April. And despite being in 10th place, they're far from out of it. And the way hockey works today, it wouldn't be a shock if they made it. But they're just simply seen as that. A team who makes it but doesn't do much with it. But we'll see what the Kings can do in this final stretch. Well, they opened the month right as Jeff Carter broke out with 2 goals and a 4-2 win over the Anaheim Ducks, and Richards, who's been criticized for his play somewhat, garnered 3 assists in the win, and Quick had another great game in net. Hey, they continue to look excellent in a seesaw battle against the Nashville Predators, where they won 5-4 on the road. Williams had 2 goals in the win. Lewis and Mitchell each had 2 points. So far, March looking pretty good for the Kings, as the team is playing pure 4-line hockey, everyone up and down, making sure they won a given game. However, the momentum halted, and when they suffered a 3-1 loss to lowly Columbus as Jeff Carter got booed out of the building by the fans of his now former team, Kopitar, however, scored his 20th goal of the year, and now has reached that mark. In all 6 seasons of his career, Bernier stopped 33 of 36 shots, getting a start in the game. And Carter played a great game against the high-powered Detroit Red Wings, and the Kings actually took a 3-2 lead after a Dwight King goal with just under 6 minutes to play. But 1:52 later, the Wings tied it, and with just 1:13 to play, Darren Helm scored the game winner for Detroit. A heartbreaking 4-3 loss. Back-to-back losses was the last thing this team needed at this point in the season, but then this Kings team did what many of their fans knew they were capable of, and the timing couldn't be better. They went on an absolute rip-roaring tear, crowning teams left and right. First, it was a tight affair with the Chicago Blackhawks, who they had a lot of luck against this year. Quick faced an onslaught of 37 shots, but stopped 35 of them, and it went to a shootout. And in the 6th attempt, Richards notched the winner. But how about this? They avenged the heartbreaking loss to the Detroit Red Wings in a monster 5-2 win. Remember the Wings beat them 8-2 earlier this year? And indeed, the Kings, they're scoring goals. They're making things happen. Brown, Carter, Kopitar, and Williams each have 2 points, as does Doughty, who plays huge on this night, is a +3. And then it was another 4-2 win over the Ducks. Williams had a goal and a helper. Green had 2 helpers. Doughty continues to roll with 2 assists, as Brown and Kopitar contributed big time and each were a +3. Bernier then gets the start against the Predators. He plays well, and it's another 4-2 victory for the Kings. Penner and Lewis each have 2 points in the win. Everyone is pulling their weight in a big way. And what a night it was for Kopitar and Richards. Each a goal and 2 assists for 3 points. The big guns are stepping up. The role players are doing their thing and doing it oh so well. The Kings also walk away with a 5-2 win over division rivals San Jose. But the next game didn't come so easy. It was a goaltending showdown with spectacular saves made by Jonathan Quick, as well as St. Louis star goaltender Brian Elliott. Quick made 35 saves. We went to a shootout, and the game was scoreless. And Carter scores the shootout winner. Quick with his 8th shutout of the year, 6 wins in a row for the Kings, their biggest hot streak of the season. And their top line and top scoring forwards are contributing more and more and more, while their defensive scheme remains the same, oh so successful. Quick shines in goal. And other than the Ducks, all these teams had significant winning records. This was no cakewalk. The hot streak, however, did come to an end in a 4-2 loss against the defending Stanley Cup champion Boston Bruins, a particularly rough outing for Carter and Richards. Then it was a game against last year's Stanley Cup finalists, the Canucks, and Luongo was just too hot for the Kings on this night, stopping all 38 shots they fired in on him in a drop of 1-0 loss. Again, not what they need. However, they left Vancouver and had better success in Alberta. Quick stopped 19 shots of his 9th shutout of the year, and Kopitar had 2 helpers in a 3-0 shutout win over Calgary, as Dustin Brown reached a 20th goal mark for the 5th straight year. And then came another dominant win, 4-1 over the Oilers. Green and King each with 2 assists, while Kopitar had a goal and an assist. The Kings' defense and checking were just unstoppable, limiting the Oilers to 15 shots. The month of March, however, ended with a 4-3 shootout loss to the Minnesota Wild. The Kings still get a point. What a night for Dustin Brown. 3 points, a goal, 2 assists, as well as Kopitar in on all 3 goals, as well with 3 helpers, and Brad Richardson had a banner night himself with 2 goals. Well, with 3 games to go as we head into April, the LA Kings sit in 7th place in the West, in line for a playoff spot, but they have yet to clinch with their 91 points. They have identical records with first place Phoenix. They can still clinch the division, ensuring them a spot in 3rd place, but the Sharks can as well. And also the Kings playoff spot is still threatened by another division rival, the Dallas Stars, as well as the Colorado Avalanche. They sit 9th and 10th respectively, while 5 teams are indeed out of the playoffs. Well, the Kings get a step closer with a 2-0 shutout win over the Edmonton Oilers at home, meaning Jonathan Quick has his 10th shutout of the year, and the Kings take the division lead for a day and sit in 3rd place. But then came April 5th, a huge divisional game against the San Jose Sharks. It's going to be a home series, as these two plus the Coyotes are still battling for that 3rd place spot in division title. The Kings led 3-1 at one point in the second period, but by late in the third, the Sharks would lead 5-4. But with 3:31 left, Williams scores a huge power play marker. They go to overtime, which settled nothing, but the Sharks got the win in the shootout, but it was still good news for the Kings. That means they sit at 94 points with the point in the loss, as the Avalanche are already out and the Stars lost their game against Nashville. They were officially eliminated with the loss, meaning the Los Angeles Kings are in the playoffs. Mitchell and Kopitar each had 3 assists, while Williams had 2 goals in the game. Either way, the fight to make it paid off despite the overtime loss. And they end the season on the road in San Jose and are unable to get the win and reach 7th place. Even with the win, however, 7th is as high as they would be, as the Coyotes clinched the division with their win that day. Williams had a goal and a helper, and that's the regular season all said and done. The Kings did have a 2-0 lead, but let it slip and would lose in overtime. The Kings knew that the final stretch had their playoff hopes hanging in the balance, but they came together to make it happen. With a monster 11-4-3 record in the final 18 games, including that monster 6-game winning streak, and it made all the difference. The Kings finished the season with a record of 40, 27, and 15 for 95 points. They finished 8th place in the Western Conference, holding that 8th and final playoff spot. And despite their fight to get it, not many people are giving them a fighting chance. Oh yes, though, but the top dogs were barking and biting. Anze Kopitar was a machine out there. 7 goals, 15 assists for 22 points in the final 18 games, and was playing the most determined hockey of his career, as he is the only player to be in the top 3 every month this season. Justin Williams was also incredible, leading the team with his 9 goals, tied for 2nd with 16 points, while team captain Dustin Brown was playing on another planet with his 16 points, 4 goals, and 12 assists. Carter played well in showing that he'll be essential come playoff time, while Mike Richards had a much better month this season to end it than the last. Dwight King proved to be a great call-up. He played fantastically, also producing 10 points in addition to his grinder role, while Clifford and Nolan also played their roles to perfection. Patterson still played well, and also Trevor Lewis was a hidden weapon for the club. The Kings had their best monthly goals a game average all year, but just above 3 goals a game. They could barely get to 2.5 most of the year, and even at times could barely get to 2. What an amazing month for Willie Mitchell, proving that he was worth the acquisition for the club to strengthen their defense. He led the team with a monster plus 14 in the final 18 games. Despite not being known for his scoring ability, he actually led all defensemen in scoring for the final month with a goal and 9 helpers for 10 points. And Doughty played excellently in many games, especially on the winning streak, to no surprise, while Alec Martinez had his best month of the season, as did Matt Green, who has definitely been a force to be reckoned with. Slava Voinov had a tremendous month. Scuderi did struggle a little bit, but played well in many games. But again, Jonathan Quick was the most consistent thing about the Kings all year, it seemed, and he did it again. Yes, a few rough outings, pretty much the losses he had, but 3 more shutouts, a goals against average just above 2. He was sensational making those huge saves, and when you win 10 games in a month, that says something. Bernier looked pretty good in his appearances, again proving to be a fairly reliable backup. But now, let's look at the final numbers. And indeed, goals were still a big problem for the Kings, as has been the recurring theme in this video, so big in fact that they were an abysmal 194, and it was 29th out of 30 teams, second worst in the league. Only the Minnesota Wild, who were a very big disappointment this year, scored less. And it's 25 less than the year before when they were 21st, still not very good even then. However, the improvement of their goal-scoring prowess in the final month could be very beneficial come playoff time. However, it was quite the opposite in the goals against department. They only allowed 179, that's second fewest in the league, and 19 less than the year prior when they were still ranked a very good number 5. However, this is what likely lifted them above their lack of scoring up front, as only the St. Louis Blues have given up less goals all year. Their power play saw a slight improvement, moving from 21st to 17th. However, it was still not great, and it was at least average for the most part, and adding Jeff Carter can likely help in that regard in the long term. But the penalty kill was a whole other story. Thanks to the likes of Kopitar and Richards, as well as grinders such as Stoll and Penner, and later on King and Nolan, the penalty kill was every bit as good as it was last year, ranked high at number 4, and has also been key in their success this season. It's no surprise their star forward this season was indeed Anze Kopitar, as he has been pretty much since he entered the team, who he led the way with 25 goals, 51 assists for 76 points. They were all team highs this season, and was a really good plus 12. Despite their lack of scoring prowess, this isn't to say their other forwards didn't deliver and didn't work hard. Justin Williams had 22 goals and 37 assists for 59 points and has been a tremendous asset to the club. Also, team captain Dustin Brown puts forth a tireless effort. He is third in scoring with 22 goals and 32 assists for 54 points and led all forwards on the Kings with a plus 18. The addition of Jeff Carter has been beneficial, but many feel he's not quite 120% back to his old self yet, as in just 16 games he had 6 goals and 9 points, and they're still going to need him going forward. Mike Richards didn't rack up the numbers some had hoped, but that being said, his presence on the penalty kill and checking situations is what's going to be needed come playoff time. Simon Gagne looked excellent early on, but his status at this time is still unknown. On the grind against Stoll and Penner were tremendous, but the big surprise was Dwight King added late in the season, and Jordan Nolan provided a great deal of size up front as well. Also, Kyle Clifford's toughness definitely did not hurt the team, nor did the presence of Colin Fraser, Brad Richardson, or Trevor Lewis throughout the season. Everyone was pulling their weight from the top to the bottom of the Lions. Their defense, however, was truly the pillar of this club this season. Drew Doughty delivered as the leading scorer among defensemen with 10 goals and 26 assists for 36 points leading the team. And that's not all that surprising, because he had a really good season, but apparently did not impress voters. He didn't register a single vote for the Norris Trophy this year as the league's top defenseman, but regardless, he showed just why he is important to this club. However, Willie Mitchell has proven to be a steal of a deal. His traditional play and overall presence on the ice stood out and definitely proved to be beneficial to this blue line core. He led the entire team with a plus 20 and gave this blue line a lot of experience. Also, we have to give a great deal of credit to Matt Green, who really proved himself in a huge way this year and what he could do, and he was a pretty big surprise in a lot of ways. But the biggest surprise, however, was rookie Slava Voinov, who wasn't expected to make all that much of an impact, but was actually a huge part of the lineup. And despite missing 31 games, Alec Martinez helped the Kings to many wins, as did Rob Scuderi, who did struggle somewhat during times of the season. And as for Jack Johnson, who was traded for Carter, he played well for the most part, but again won't be here to see what his team can do the rest of the way. Jonathan Quick just had a wonderful year, playing in 69 games. He had 35 wins, 21 losses, and 13 overtime/shootout losses. And look at the numbers, a 1.95 goals against average, that's less than 2 a game, remarkable. A .929 save percentage, just truly brilliant, and 10, count them, 10 shutouts. His value to this team should get him some MVP votes, no doubt. He's the primary reason, despite tons of good players, why the Kings even made the playoffs. And Bernier, to his credit, was solid in his appearances this year. And despite his losing record of 5-6-1, he was never really outright terrible. His goals against average was a really good 2.36 and had an excellent .909 save percentage. It's also very good, and he did obtain a shutout. But let's look further at Jonathan Quick. His 929 save percentage was 5th best in the league, and he certainly did have a knack for making those big saves. And if you look at this list, look at all these really good goaltenders in this era. And his 1.95 goals against average, second best in the league, only behind Brian Elliott, who was just psycho good for the St. Louis Blues that year. But either way, Quick is one of the best against top forwards in the league. And the last proof of that, 10! His 10 shutouts led the entire NHL, again making his case known for the Vezina and for the Hart Trophy as league MVP. Also, another category, Quick was tied for 5th best in wins in the NHL with 35 on the year. To top off those accomplishments. However, he sadly comes up short in Vezina Trophy voting, as he is indeed a finalist. As a matter of fact, he's even the first runner-up to winner Henrik Lundqvist of the New York Rangers, who did have a phenomenal year, to be fair. But at least this shows how good he really is, and again, his value to the team cannot be understated. Quick garnered 63 votes for the award, and Lundqvist had 120. And that brings us to the remainder of King's Awards candidates. Indeed, Quick fared extremely well in Hart Trophy voting, coming in 5th with 357 votes. That's fantastic. Also for the Lady Byng Trophy, Kopitar registered 33 votes, coming in for 19th place, getting the award for excellence in sportsmanship. Defenseman Slava Voynov came in 10th place with 10 votes for the Calder Trophy as the league's top rookie. However, in a big surprise, Willie Mitchell was the only Kings defenseman to register a single vote. Actually, that's literally what he got for the Norris Trophy as the league's top defenseman. And as for the Selke, as the league's top defensive forward, no surprise with the way Kings' defensive scheme worked this year. 4 Kings got votes, as Kopitar, however, was the only one to make the top 10 at 9th. Mike Richards got a handful of votes at 25th. Stahl managed to garner a few, tied for 39th, and getting a single vote was team captain Dustin Brown. Hey, but the Kings weren't completely shut out, as, speaking of shutout, the man who got 10 of them, Jonathan Quick, was named to the second All-Star team for the very first time. And on top of that, he is the first Kings goaltender in 31 years since Mario Lessard in 1981 to accomplish this feat. And indeed, that closes part 1 of our look at the 2011-2012 Los Angeles Kings, as they are indeed the 8th and final seed in the West, as we get ready to say, it's playoff time. That'll be in part 2, and until part 2, like and share this video, subscribe to the channel, and until next time, I'll see ya.